So, what do the Iraqis want? Well, last month, the nonprofit group Just Foreign Policy claimed the number of Iraqis killed as a result of the U.S. invasion stands at more than 1 million. A report released by Oxfam said that around 8 million Iraqis are in urgent need of water, sanitation, food, and shelter, and more than 2 million people, mostly women and children, have been displaced within Iraq and have no reliable income, while another 2 million Iraqis have fled the country as refugees. Iraqi-American physician Dalia Wasfi noted that 68% of Iraqis are without clean water, 81% are without working sewers, and 1 in 8 children dies by the age of 5. These are because of the conditions and because they don't have medical care that they had before we started this war. She also said people were exposed to white phosphorus, a weapon that can cause burning of the flesh that was reportedly used in the offensive on the Iraqi city of Fallujah. 75% of doctors and pharmacists have left their jobs in the hospitals, clinics, and universities because it's unsafe. 2 million people are no longer being fed because food cannot be distributed in the dangerous areas. Unemployment is 68% of the workforce. Can you hear me? Yes. This, of course, is a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions that continues to worsen. So, what do the Iraqis want? They want the U.S. out of Iraq now.
Yeah.
The opinion poll commissioned by ABC News, BBC, Japanese television, and published recently shows that 70% of Iraqis say their security has got much worse during the last 6 months when the U.S. increased the number of its troops. The Iraqi women's movement continues to advocate for the legal protection of their rights in the midst of this occupation. In 2005, as you heard previous speakers say, as the Iraqi constitution was being written under occupation, they petitioned for the inclusion of the personal status law and asked that the law include the provision honoring international treaties regarding human rights in general and women's rights in particular. And they wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi explaining this is what they were looking for, and their letter was ignored. Recently, some Americans who wanted to see what this war was doing to Iraqis visited a family. They entered a gate next to a small shop. They went up the back stairs. They saw a small alcove that held a tiny little kitchen and a bathroom. And down the hall was a single room where the Americans were greeted enthusiastically and warmly by Musha and Shatta and their 7 children. This Iraqi family lives, sleeps, eats, and plays in a space that measures 11 by 16 feet. Further evidence of the cost of the war can be seen at the Orthotics Prosthesis Workshop at Baghdad Center for Rehabilitation and Physiotherapy. 7-year-old Hatem doesn't remember the night U.S. troops fired into his home, but he has the rest of his life to remember his father, who was killed, and to learn how to live with an amputated leg. Raid's cousins towered over him in a protective and gentle manner as he recounted a day in September. He was tending his field in the town of Balad when he stepped on an unexploded ordnance. His leg and most of his fingers were blown off. His other leg was mangled and is now infected and will have to be amputated. His doctor said, "What can we do for Raid? He is not a candidate for a prosthesis because he lost his fingers in the explosion and is unable to use crutches." Zainab Yassin, 3 years old, drifted off to sleep as she did every night, listening to the chatter of the 26 relatives with whom she lived. She awoke to her home collapsing on her. Somehow, everyone survived, but 17 months later, Zainab still can't move her legs. And the family is still recovering, emotionally, financially, and physically, from that instant of devastation. So what do the Iraqis want? They want the U.S. out of Iraq now. Now, oil and the oil law. And you know how key the oil is. In June of this year, the biggest and strongest of the Iraqi unions, the Iraqi Federation of Oil Unions, launched a limited strike to underline its call for keeping oil in public hands and to force the government to live up to its economic promises. It was a limited action, still allowed the economy to function, But the Iraqi Prime Minister al-Maliki responded by calling out the army, surrounding the strikers, and issuing arrest warrants for the union's leaders. As you probably know, renegotiation of the oil law would turn the industry itself over to foreign corporations, which, as you know, is what the U.S. wants. Therefore, U.S. fighter jets have circled and buzzed over the strikers' demonstrations. In Iraq, the hostile maneuvering of military aircraft is not an idle threat to the people below. The standoff reflects a long history of actions in Iraq by both the Iraqi government and the U.S. occupation to suppress union activity. The Iraqi people are opposed to the oil law. Iraqis are united in this view. There are no ethnic, sectarian, or geographical groups that prefer foreign companies controlling their oil. Arab labor leader Hassan Jaman said, "War makes privatization easy. First you destroy society, then you let the corporations rebuild it." After Halliburton entered Iraq in 2003 and tried to control the wells and rigs by withholding reconstruction aid, the union went on strike for 3 days. Exports stopped, government revenue was cut off, Halliburton shut down its operations. So what do the Iraqis want? They want the U.S. out of Iraq. When?
Now!
All right, withdrawal. The poll was conducted in Baghdad, Anbar, and Najaf on the invasion as consequences. 90% of Iraqis feel the situation in the country was better before the U.S.-led invasion. UPI reported on the survey, which was conducted in November 2006 by the Iraq Center for Research. A U.S. State Department poll, which was ignored, found that 2/3 of Baghdadis want immediate withdrawal. So, first of all, Iraqis would have been better off had we never invaded, obviously. Secondly, the Iraqis want us out of Iraq now. They overwhelmingly oppose a permanent U.S. presence in their country. A group of Iraqi nationalists, including Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds, they formed a pan-Iraqi coalition, which we never hear about, to topple al-Maliki. They represent a vast majority of rank-and-file Iraqis outside of parliament. Their primary basis of unity is opposition to the U.S. occupation of Iraq. They also strongly oppose al-Qaeda in Iraq and the Iranian influence in Iraq. All the problems come from the occupation. Bala Abu Umara, General Secretary of the Iraqi Federation of Oil Unions, observed. The occupation fosters the enormous corruption. As long as we have occupation, we'll have more sabotage and killing. But when people from the local tribes control the security, they expel the al-Qaeda forces and others who terrorize people. This means we can protect ourselves and bring security to our nation with no need of the U.S. forces. To those who believe that if the U.S. troops leave there will be chaos, I say, let them go. If we fight each other afterwards, let us do that. We are being killed by the thousands already. Iraqi unions want the occupation to end. So an honest assessment would be that the war has been lost. No amount of surges or new plans for victory can alter the fact that the Iraqi people want the occupation to end. The U.S. is in the weakest position it has been in, regionally and internationally, for years. The world is a more dangerous place. The effects of the invasion and occupation of Iraq will adversely shape geopolitics for decades to come. In effect, it's a blame and hold strategy. Blame the Iraqis for the problems we created, hold on to whatever the U.S. military can salvage in terms of military bases, and project power against other countries in the region, particularly Iran. But the bottom line is that the Iraqis know what they want. What do the Iraqis want? They want us out of Iraq. When?
Now!
Thank you.